Welcome to the video tutorial of database management system. Previous tutorial, there is a discussion about the what is a ER model, what are the components required for the ER model, then what is the attribute, what are the different types of attribute. So all that things discussed in the previous tutorial. Now in this tutorial, the learning outcomes are strong entity. Okay, what is a strong entity? How it is denoted? What is a weak entity? How weak entity is denoted? Then the mapping cardinalities that are used in the ER diagram, or it is also known as the relationship types. Okay. Now, what is relation? How relation is denoted between two entities that we have? That is we discussed in previous tutorial. Then we are going to see the few examples of ER diagram. How actually ER diagram should be designed. Now we start with our first topic, that is a strong entity. So the entity having its own attribute or having its own primary key is called as the strong entity. The entity having its own primary key is called as a strong entity because this entity is not depend on other entity. It's having its own primary key or own key attribute. That's why it is called as a strong entity. The key attribute is used to identify that entity. How we can identify the entity? Okay, so for that purpose, the key attribute is used to identify that entity uniquely among the set of entities. So this word is important, uniquely. Okay, in previous tutorial, we discuss about the one example of entity, that is the student entity. So there are number of students are studying in the same college. They are also having the same name, but how the student can identify uniquely? So student can be identified uniquely according to their enrollment number or PRN number that is provided by the university. So that's why key attributes are used to identify particular entity uniquely among the set of entities in the entity set. Take another example of mobile. There are a lot of mobiles are produced in one day, but each and every mobile having one unique name, the unique ID, that is the model number or IMEI number. So it is provided at the time of production. So this is the key attribute for mobile. What is the key attribute for student? Student PRN number or enrollment number. Take another example of hospital. So for hospital, the hospital ID. Okay. So the strong entity is denoted by the single rectangle. Strong entity is denoted by the single rectangle. Relation between the two strong entities is denoted by the single diamond, which is called as the relationship. Okay. If we have to represent the relationship between the two entities, for that purpose, we have to use the single diamond. That single diamond is known as the relationship. So that is the strong entity. Now next is a weak entity. So strong entity is what? It's having its own primary key or own key attribute. Such an entity is known as the strong entity. So exact opposite about the weak entity. An entity set may not have a sufficient attributes. An entity set may not have a sufficient attribute to form a primary key. Such an entity is called as a weak entity because they are not able to form their own key attribute. means they are dependent on other entity. That's why we are going to refer such entity as a weak entity. So weak entities depend on a strong entity and they are denoted by the double rectangle. So weak entity is depend on a strong entity and they are denoted by the double rectangle while strong entity is denoted by the single rectangle. Now take one example. So professor is a one entity. Now what are the attributes of professor? So professor ID, professor name, salary. Okay. So these are the attributes of professor entity. So among these all three attributes, which is the key attribute? So key attribute is a ID. So this is the key attribute because it having the uniqueness. From that ID, you can identify the processor uniquely among the number of processor. So this is the professor entity and these three attributes represent the characteristics of professor entity. Second entity is a dependent. Okay. Who are dependent on a professor? Okay. So on professor number of students are dependent. Okay. So name, relation, date of birth. Okay. They are having these attributes. So these attributes, from these attribute, there is no attribute who are going to represent the uniqueness of the dependent. There are name should be same, relation should be same, and date of birth should be same. So it is denoted by double rectangle. So this is the weak entity. Professor is a strong entity, while dependent is a weak entity. And it is denoted by the double rectangle. So it is a weak relationship. Okay. So weak entity is denoted by the double rectangle, while the relationship between the strong entity and weak entity is denoted by the double rectangle. So this is the weak entity. Now next topic is the mapping cardinality or relation types in ER diagram. So they are used to represent that how entities of first set are related to the how many entities of the second set. Okay. So in ER diagram, there is a relation between entity set. Okay. How one entity is related with the another entity. So for representing that logic or that visualization, mapping cardinality are used in ER diagram. So there are four types of mapping cardinality. First is a one-to-one. First one is a one-to-one. Second is a one-to-many. Third one is a many-to-one. And last one is a many-to-many. So these are the four types of mapping cardinality. Now we will discuss the first type, that is one-to-one. So only one entity of the first set is related to the only one entity of the second set. So it is a one-to-one, single to single communication. That is one-to-one communication means only one entity of the first set is related to the only one entity of the second set. So this is the example. College is a one entity and principal is a one another entity. What is the relationship between college and principal? College having a principal. Okay. It is represented like that. College having a principal. One college having only one principal. There are not more than one principal for one college. There is a vice principal, but that is a different part. So one college having only one principal. So that is the example of one-to-one mapping cardinality. And it is represented like this. You have to represent one-to-one. Second type is a one-to-many. So only one entity of the first set is related to the multiple entities of the second set. So this is the example of one-to-many. One teacher teaches sorry one teacher teaches to the multiple students. Here is a students. Okay, here we can override the details. It is not a principal, it is a student. So one teacher teaches to the multiple students and it is represented like this: one to many. Okay, so for many you have to use the symbol asterisk. Asterisk means star. So that is a one to many relationship. Third type is a many to one. So multiple entities of the first set is related to the only one entity of the second set. So this is the example. Student is a one entity and course is a another entity. Now multiple student studies only one course. Okay. Suppose consider example of your class. In your class there are 60 to 70 students who are going to study the same course, that is the computer engineering course. So this is the many to one relationship. And last is a many to many. So multiple entities of the first set are related to the multiple entities of the second set. For this, teacher is a one entity and students are the another entity. So multiple teacher teaches to the multiple students or many students. Now in one semester you are having a 5 to 6 subjects. Okay, and for each subject teacher is a different. So there are many teacher who are going to teach to the multiple student. So this is the many to many relationship. Oh, this is the one example of entity students. So here are the student name, age, date of birth, student ID, and student mobile number. So these are the attributes of the student. Okay. So student mobile number is a multi-value attribute because student having more than one mobile number. Student name, age is a derived attribute because it is derived from the date of birth. And last is a student ID, which we are going to refer as a key attribute or a primary key. Now next example is for ER diagram for the customer branch and account relationship. It is a one simple ER diagram for the basic understanding. In this ER diagram, customer branch is a one entity and account is the another entity. So what is the relationship between the customer branch and account? That we have to represent with the help of diamond. So customer branch maintains the account. Okay. Account maintains customer branch. It is not possible. Customer branch maintains the account. So what is the attributes or what are the attributes for the customer branch? So first attribute is a branch ID, that is a key attribute. Second is a branch name. Third is a location. Fourth one is a manager. Also you can take the number of attribute as per your requirement or as per your perception. Second entity is account. So account number is there. So that is a primary key attribute. Second is a branch ID, which branch that account belongs to. So that's why it is a branch ID, but it is not a primary key. It is the foreign key because it is act as a primary key in another table. So third attribute is account type, and we have also taken another attribute, that is the balance. Okay. So this is the one simple ER diagram for the customer branch and account relationship. Now next ER diagram for the hospital management system. Entities are patient, hospital, doctor and medical record. So patient admitted in a hospital. So n number of patient. Okay, so n number of means multiple or many patient admitted in one hospital having or has multiple doctors. Okay, one patient has many medical records. Okay, so what are the attributes for patient? Patient ID, which is the key attribute, patient name, patient address, patient diagnosis. Attributes for the hospital, hospital ID, hospital name, hospital city. Attributes for the doctor, doctor ID, qualification, salary, doctor name. Attributes for the medical record, record ID, which is the key attribute, date of examination, problems or symptoms. So you can also elaborate this your diagram as per your perception, what you are thinking in the hospital management system. If you have visited the hospital, then you can briefly draw this ER diagram. So this is one simple diagram for the hospital management system. Next example of ER diagram is the for library management system. Now in library, there is a book is a one entity, book is a one entity, borrower is the another entity, second, fine is the third entity, and publisher are the fourth entity. So there are four entities in this ER diagram. So what is the relationship between book and borrower? So book borrowed by the borrower, book borrowed by the borrower, book publishes by the publisher, borrower pays fine. So this is the big entity because every borrower should not pay the fine. Those who have not returned book on time, they are going to pay the fine. That's why it is the big entity, and borrower is a strong entity. And the relation between the strong entity and weak entity is represented by the double rectangle. That's why here is the double diamond. Sorry, here is the double diamond. So the attributes are mentioned, okay, and relationship is also mentioned. If book is not written by borrower on time, then borrower has to pay the fine. So that is the borrower ID because it is a big entity, fine is paid by the borrower. In which condition? If he or she are not able to return the book on time. So this is the one ER diagram for the library management system. So this is the end of tutorial. So in this tutorial, we discuss about the strong entity, weak entity, mapping cardinality or relationship types. There are four types of relationship: one to one to many to one, and many to many. After that, there is a discussion about how to draw the ER diagram. We discuss few examples. You can also draw or design ER diagram on different topics like railway reservation, airline reservation, bus reservation system, college management system, bank management system. Okay. So admission process. So according to your perception, you can draw ER diagram. Thank you.